Welcome to another episode of Tsuriou Master Class. Today we'll be talking about how to set up your rod. So there's no right or wrong way to set up rod. So you can set up your own way, but this is the way how our team set up and how we use. So you can do your own way, but this is what we do and have been successful with this setup. So don't worry about what we will be teaching you, but just use our knowledge to fine-tune your own system as well. Today I'll be explaining the whole process of the whole rod, how to set up, and also each part of the rod, from the length, the line, the reel, the clips, all those information that you need. So we'll start off with the rod. So rod length. So what is the ideal rod length? For land-based, personally, we think will be 8 feet and above. The reason being is that you can cast further to target more of the spaces, to target more of the area that you need to, and because of longer rod you can cast further. So it's important to have a rod that is 8 feet and above. But do note that if you go rod that is 9 feet and above, you will get further distance, but the downside is that you lose the sensitivity of the rod. So when the squid touch, you'll lose it because the tip of the rod become too bouncy when you have the jig on it, as well as that because of the length. So to transfer the energy of the squid touch to your handle, it'll be less energy, so you will feel less of the squid touch. So ideally it's 8 feet and above, but between 8 feet and 9 feet is the most the sweet spot. But you can go shorter rod if you want to, but just that you lose that on the casting distance. For boat, ideally we'll go for 7 feet rod. Personally, it's because that the space in the boat is less, so that you need a shorter rod so that you don't tangle with other people or hook on the roof of the boat or anything. But also because that boat you can directly drive to where the squid is, so you don't have to cast too many area in the distance, because you can just drive right to where the squid spot is and just start casting, so you don't need the longer rod for the distance. But you can still get a longer rod if your boat is not covered with the roof or there's not many people, so that you can cast an extra distance to try to cover more spot instead of just driving further up and moving around often. So rod's length is up to your personal choice, but ideally for us we use anything for 8 feet and above, so that's what we use. So for price of rod, so expensive rod and the cheap rod, they do have some difference. So you can catch squid with any rod, even hand reel or anything, but ideally it's up to your personal choice and personal budget. So there's no right or wrong, because if you can afford a higher end, you can enjoy it. But if you prefer the lower end, then that's fair enough. It's up to you as well. So there's no right or wrong. So there's no point attacking someone that's, oh, you're spending so much money on an expensive rod for the squid only. But the difference is that for expensive rod, it's more finesse, so you can actually feel the squid touch more sensitive, and so you can actually feel it much easier. So you can strike the squid with an additional technique to strike the squid much easier. So there's no right or wrong. But for cheaper rod, you can do the same as well, as long as you know how to read your own rod and know how does it reflect the information from the squid touch to your rod. Because I have friends that use $20 Kmart extendable rod, and he outfished people using expensive Japanese rod that's like $1,000 over. So it's ideally to learn how to read your own rod. As long as you read your own rod properly, you will actually get a higher catch rate as well. So length I have covered. So reel. So reel, ideally we'll go for size 1,000 to 3,000 maximum. Personally, we won't go anything higher. A reason why being is that because you'll be egging non-stop the whole day. So if you go much higher than that, you'll be very heavy for the duration of your fishing. Not only that, you'll actually be off balance compared to your rod. So because the squid rod is not as heavy as other fishing rod, so you wouldn't want a reel that is much bigger than 3,000. We personally use 2,500, partly because that we can have more line on it. 1,000 you can have less line, but it's more lighter as well, so it's up to you to balance up. So this is for reel. So for line personally, for main line, it's important to use braid line. Do not use monofilament for land-based. Reason why being, braid line does not have stretch, so that when it's very solid, so when you pull, when you tap, you'll feel it. So when a monofilament, you're using monofilament, when the squid pulling and it's stretchy, you will not feel the squid at times, so you might miss a lot of catch or a lot of strike to try to strike the squid. So with braid line, you can actually feel the tug from the squid, so that you will feel the reflection of the energy from the squid to your rod. Then you can feel it, then you can strike it. So it's important to use braided line. So for braid line, what is the ideal pound? This is also personal choice. So personally, you can go, the normal range is between 8 pound to 15 pound. That's what people use. You have to see what area you're fishing and also how snaggy it is. If it's an area with a lot of weeds, you tend to want to use a higher pound. So the reason, if you're using higher pound, you have less breakage of your line and you lose less jig, but in return, you lose the sensitivity as well. The lighter the line is, the more sensitive it is, but the stronger the line is, the pound, you become stronger and you lose less jig as well. But as long as you learn how to read the squid touch, even stronger pound line doesn't matter, because you can still feel it as long as you learn like a rod to understand how your line works and how it reacts with squid. So personally, we use 15 pound up to 23 pounds. So we use, personally our team go for high-end braid. So we use Golden braid. They are more expensive, but expensive braid, they are woven to be much thinner in diameter. So you can go higher pounds. So we go up to 20 to 23 pounds from with the Golden, but the diameter of the line is so thin that it's equivalent to 12 to 15 pounds of other brands' line. So we can still use higher pound up to 23 pounds and all these things, but the line diameter is still very thin. So it's still very sensitive, even though it's very high pound. So that's for braid. So braid is up to you. So, but personally, do not use monofilament, because they have monofilament. Another problem is that it has memory, so it coils around the reel. So it'll be like a coil. So the line will become coil. So when you cast it out, at times it's coiled out. When the squid is pulling, it's a lot of like a spring. You do not feel the squid because of the memory of the line. And also, when you keep constantly casting and reeling, you'll end up getting messed up your line as well. It gets all stuck as well. So it's best not to use monofilament for squid fishing. You lose the sensitivity, you lose the feeling of the squid touching because of the stretchiness, as well as the memory of the line. It coils up. So ideally, don't use monofilament. Back then, people used monofilament because there's no braid technology, but now there's braid technology. It's best to use braid. So for leader line, we would suggest use fluorocarbon. Once again, it's also depending on the area you're fishing. If it's more snaggy, use higher pound fluorocarbon. And also if it's not so snaggy, you can go lower, as long as you know that you can remove the line from the weed easily. Why we have a leader line in front of a meter, or we usually go for about 50 centimeter to a meter. At times people go the full length of the rod, so that one I'll explain later. So the reason is that you make the braid line transparent, so squid do not see it, and also it does, because braid line is made of cloth materials similar to that, a nylon or those type of material. So when you touch on rock and stuff, it's easily cut off. So you want a 50 centimeter to a meter of fluorocarbon to become to take the abrasion of the rocks and all these things, so that it does not cut off the line. So if you go directly to the braid, there's high chance that once you touch anything that is sharp or weeds, when you pull it out, you might cut the line easily. So ideally, do not go direct with braid. And also it's visible, more visible to the squid as well. So that's why we prefer transparent fluorocarbon. And for clips, for line, for our team, we usually use 15 pound fluorocarbon, and you can go lower. That's the same thing, you get more sensitivity as the lower you go. So that's pretty much it. So for clips, there's a lot of different types of clips. So ideally you can choose one that you feel is comfortable to you, that you find it's easily change your squid jig and stuff. So personally, have our two types of squid jig clips that we use often. So this one is more secure. We find it more secure because it's clip on internally, and this one is more convenient. So you just press it and you can put it in. So clips is it's important to use as well. Why? Because that as you keep constantly casting the jig, and when you keep hitting the rocks or anywhere, and this part of if it's the line, if you tie direct the line to the squid jig, because you're constantly hitting on the rocks and stuff, or the bottom of the weeds and everything, you actually start to wear off the knot. So we have that, this part will be touching the rocks or the base of the seabed and stuff, so that you do not damage the knot itself, the integrity of the knot. So it's important to have a clip, and also for the convenience of constantly changing up your jig, it will be much easier as well. So how do we set up our setup? So this, let me see if I can see my rod. Oh, one more thing, for knots, I'll be explaining how do we do the knots as well. So knots we'll be using mainly for our team, we use uni knot. And if you want, you could use FG knot, which is much more nicer, and it's easier to go through the guide, which is much more clean, the knot, compared to uni knot. But for us, we use uni knot for the convenience as well. So because it's much easy to do the uni knot on the spot, whenever we need to do the change. So how we set up our rod. So we have the reel, our main line. So we go all the way to the end. This rod is an 8-foot rod, so it's a bit long. Then we have a uni knot here. So we have a uni knot, and then followed by a 50 centimeter to a meter. Then we have a clip. So this is how we set up our rod. So I'll do some demonstration on how we set up the whole thing. Just put the rod away. So just think of this rod as an 8-foot rod. So this is a mini rod. So we'll set up the whole thing. All right, so this is our main line. Thinking this is your reel. So now we'll set up the whole thing. So first, as usual, you'll thread your main line into your guides. So just imagine this is your reel. So this is an 8-foot rod, not a mini rod, okay? So once you thread it, then we get your leader line. Okay, this is a leader line, all right? Just an example. So we'll do uni knot. Uni knot usually is you do a loop. You do a loop. It's pretty easy. Then you just go once. You do multiple times. I just get the line longer because the line is pretty thick. So we do a loop like that. Then you just coil around to usually do about 3-4 times, but this line is a bit thick, so we just do 2. Then you just pull. Then you should create like that, something like that. Then you do the other side on the main line. Same thing. Do a coil around, a round circle. Just go 1, 2, 3. For the actual fishing line, you can do up to like 6 to 8 or 5. But for this one, it's because too thick, I'll do it relatively just 2 or 3. So you just pull. All right, so once it's done, you should create like 2 like that. So you wet the line, then you pull them together. Then you should, to pull it together. So you pull both sides, then you lock it up, you interlock like that. So now you have your rod, and the main line and the fluorocarbon now is locked together. Then you can just use the scissors to snip it off, the excess. Then you go about 50 centimeter to a meter, depending your choice. For this, I'll cut a bit longer so that I can easily to tie it, just to show example. So once you cut off your leader line, so you have a leader line, consider this is a 50 centimeter or a meter. It's not that long because the rod is a bit short. So just imagine this is just a 50 centimeter line. Then you can just put your clip. Just think of this as a clip, all right? Because we don't have a really big one, so we just make one out the wiring. So same thing. You can use uni knot or blood knot or any knot that you find that is convenient. Do a loop, then you go 1, 2. You can't do more than 2 because it's too thick the line, so we can pull. So wet the line, and you pull, then you got a clip. So pretty much this is how we set up our rod. From the reel to a uni knot to the end of the line and a clip. So this is ideally the easiest way to set up your rod. Why do we use uni knot? Partly is because that it's much easier to set up. You can use Albright, Alberto knot, and if you are more used to doing FG knot, if you can do it easily, then you can use FG knot as well. There's another method of setting up as well, and the other method is that because for us we fish actually leave the knot out, so we don't usually go have our uni knot into our guide. So when you cast, always leave your knot just slightly above the outside the tip of the rod, so that it doesn't go into a knot at the tip, so it doesn't constantly damaging the tip of the rod. Especially if you're using high-end rod, the tip is very small, so the hole is very small, so that we usually use uni knot and leave it out. But you can do it like how people fish for bream. You can go up for FG knot. FG knot, you can actually have the whole knot go in all the way to your rod, so you can literally have the length of your, for fishing like a bream method, so your leader line can be as long as the rod. And also you can have the clip at the end, and the reason why being that you can have that is that for people doing bream fishing, they have a longer leader line with an FG knot that go through all the way to the rod, so that they do not use a clip, they directly tie to the soft plastic, so that they can feel the sensitivity much more. So for squid fishing, you can do the same method but with a clip at the end, so you can change the clip much easier. Or without a clip, some people do it without a clip, when they're doing boat fishing. So when they want to change the jig, they just snip it off because they have a much more leader line. They can just snip it off and just retie a new jig. But personally, we advise to have a clip. It's much easier and it protects the integrity of the knot as well. So for the method like that, you can use FG knot. You have to use FG knot because FG knot is more clean and smaller, so that you'll go through the guide without an issue. So you can have a longer leader line and you can directly cast. Let's say your knot is in here, you can cast and you actually cast the whole leader line out. It's fine as well, so not an issue. So depending on your own preference, but for us we don't use FG knot. It's because that we want convenience, and also it does not serve the purpose for us. It's because that we use, our rod tip is very small. You can see here, it's so small that we do not want the knot to be inside the guide, to constantly rubbing on it and to damage it, so that we always leave the knot outside the rod before we cast. I'll do an actual setup for the rod itself on my whole main rod. So I'll cut off the line. So I'll cut off. Let me just loosen up the. So this is how we set it up. So I'll do an example right from the start. with an actual rod. So with an actual rod, we'll trade the line as usual through all the guides. Then I'll cut off the existing line. Alright, so once you trade it, your line should be like that. Then we just get a fluorocarbon. You can actually have it much longer because when you tie it, you can shorten it so you have more space to tie it. So, same thing, leader line, main line. So we do a uni knot, do a loop. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So wet your line, then you pull it. So you should have a nice clean knot like that. Then if your main line is too short, just pull it through. Same thing. I'll just release the line a bit. Nothing should be right. So the same thing, just do a loop. It's 1, 2, 3. Because my main line is a bit thin, I can do a few more loops. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pull it through like that. Just once again, wet your line, pull them together and tighten it. So that's done. So you should have a clean knot like that. So they interlock. So once it's done, get your clip. For us, we use uni knot again. So you can search up uni knot, and to learn that knot is pretty simple knot. So and it's very strong. You don't need fancy knot because the squid is not that tough that we actually rip out the knot and stuff. As long as you use a proper knot, Albright, Alberto, FG. For the clips, you can use blood knot, Palomar knot, so like that. Wet it, pull it tight, snip it on. So you can see, nice and clean. So you get a nice and clean knot. Then pretty much, you just snip it off, the excess. Just leave a tiny bit at the end. Just give it a sec. Because I don't have a braid scissors with me at the moment, so it's harder to cut the braid. Alright, so once it's done, you can add on a jig. So you see, our leader is about 50 centimeters, or slightly more, about 60. So you can do a meter or up to you. So then before we cast, now the line is not at the tip, so we'll actually, ideally, we'll reel it in. So we reel the line in to the tip. So we leave about this much of a line. The knot is here. So we leave the knot around here with the tip before we cast it out. So that's crucial. So, because if you constantly have your knot inside, you damage your rod tip. And also at times you hear people cast it out and hear weeping sound, and you know that the knot might have tangled in the rod tip and actually snap the whole line off. Before you cast, also do have a look at your tip, that you don't have line wrap. If you have line wrap, when you cast, your line snap or your rod might snap. So it's important to look at that, especially if you're using high-end rod, because the line is, the tip of the rod is very thin, so it's finesse. The chances of it breaking is even higher. So that's pretty much it. And we're currently having a Lunar New Year promotion. So if you spend 150 bucks, you get this limited edition snake, the Year of the Snake squid jigs. So these are hand designed. So this is our limited edition snake for the Year of the Snake. And if you spend 200 bucks, you get both the lion dance as well as the snake. So this is our special promo for Lunar New Year. Any questions? If any questions, just let me know in the comments, and I'll answer the questions depending on what you have. So it's pretty easy. Have a main line, make sure it's braided line so that it do not stretch. You can feel the squid touch, and have a main leader line using fluorocarbon. So pound and breaking strain is all up to you. You can decide on your personal choice. So if you can find higher end line, it's tend to be much more thinner in diameter. So they're much better, and you have higher breaking strain as a higher pound. So personally, what rod and reel setup do you use? For me, I personally use Daiwa rod and reel. Partly for me, because don't use what I use because I'm going for high end, because I used to use the cheaper rods. Then as the time goes on, I start to learn from the lower end rod how to read it and stuff. So once you go to the high end rod, you actually feel the finesse of it. Then you're actually much easier to strike. You can add extra technique that we'll teach later on. So when the squid touch, you can actually, so for high end rod, I usually put my finger on the rod like that. So whenever the squid touch, I can feel the vibration. Then I'll strike the squid. So for rod, I'm using, this is the Daiwa 60th edition, anniversary edition. It's the Stowist. I personally like the Stowist edition rods, or you can go for the middle range or the lower range of Daiwa Emeraldas. The Emeraldas, I love their colors. They have like the Tiffany blue. And the reel as well, I'm using the Emeralda reels. So that's the Tiffany blue reel as well. So that's the reason. For the line, actually, for leader line, I use the cheap FC Rock line. Personally, I find that it does not break that easily. So this brand is what I use. I usually use 15 pound. This is a 6 pound, because I don't ran out 15 pound. I need to go and get more. So I personally use the FC Rock. So this is the 15 pound I usually use. But for line, I use, this one is pretty expensive. The line is Gosen. So Gosen line. So the reason why I use Gosen line is partly because that is one of the only company that have 16 ply. So fishing line, you have 4 ply, 8 ply, and 16 ply. Meaning that you have 4 strands of line that they weave together to become one line. And for 8 times strand is that 8 ply means that they use 8 strand of line to weave to one strand of line. But for Gosen, they use 16 strand of line to weave into one strand of line. So they are one of the few companies that does 16 ply. and because of that, they can use thinner line to weave into a thicker line. So as a result, they are higher pound. I can get like 30. I use 23 pound of it. So people say like I overkill and stuff, but actually not, because I'm using 23 pound. But the diameter is only about 12 pound to 15 pound line compared to other company, because it's 16 ply. So that's why I use this line, is because that I get the thinner diameter, but as well as the strength I need, and I do not lose jigs because of that. So I can fish in a very area with kelp or a lot of weeds. I can still remove my jig without an issue, because my line is pretty high in pound. For beginner setup, actually, I would recommend getting actually, for beginner setup, try to get a low end squid rod. Don't spend on the middle range, because I find that from the low to mid range is about the same, because the stiffness is about the same, so you don't really get the benefit of the sensitivity as well. So get a lower range rod, about $100 Aussie or below, that'll be fine, because anything about 300-400 Aussie, that's a mid range, which is, I find that there's not much benefit to it. So I don't really suggest, because for us in Australia we have the one that is called Rovax, which is under Jarvis Walker. Rovax, that one is a $60 rod, but I usually recommend to people when they start up, because it's versatile. You can use for squid and fish, and it's also the length is good for the casting of the distance. So don't spend too expensive on a rod for squidding when you're starting out. So learn to read how your rod is, what it's telling you. So using the line, using the technique, and using the feel, understand the feel, how the information is transferred to you is more crucial. Because my friend using a $20 Kmart rod that is extendable. Back then it was crazy, because his wife doesn't allow to spend on too pricey rod. So he learned to use cheap rod. But if you learn to become one with the rod, understand how the rod works and how it transfer the information to you, you'll be very successful. Actually, you outfish people using the high-end rod. A lot of people have the gear but do not know how to use it. It's the same thing. So I can have the high-end gear, but I do not know how to utilize it. Then it's useless as well. Because a lot of people spend on high-end gear because they have the money, but they do not know how to use it properly. Then that's the problem. In Asian country, that's the good thing about it, is that a lot of the third world country, like they use the rods. It's cheap, but their technique and the understanding of the rod, as well as the bait and everything, is so good that they can outfish anyone with the expensive rod. That's why gear is just to help you to enjoy the hobby more. Doesn't mean that expensive gear will help you to catch more squid. So it's not like that. It's actually how your technique, the understanding of the rod, and the weather condition, the jig colors, and all these things is a combination of all to come together to make it successful. Ideally, rod, once you have, it's like a Ferrari and a Mitsubishi, it's the same thing. It's just that they both get you to the destination the same. Just that Ferrari, you might enjoy the speed or anything, the extras that it comes with, but they both do the same thing. So don't have to spend too much on a rod when you're starting out. Just spend on what you can afford and learn to understand it. Once you learn to understand cheap rod and how it tells you stuff, you actually will become much better when you're using a more expensive rod, because once you have the expensive rod, you find that, oh, it's much more easy to detect the squid and stuff. For Hobart, I'm not too sure about Hobart. I have been to there, but I have not had the chance to fish there. So in terms of that, for us personally, if you are new to an area, open up Google Maps and turn on the 3D. So you open the 3D option on the maps, then you go look for the different spots around the area, the sea. Let me see if I can do it. I'll just show you an example. Let me see. Let's see if I can show you an example on how to do it. So if you Google, you open up into a 3D mode, like that. So once you go to the area, okay, once you go to the area of the beach, look for area that is dark spot. So if you see the dark weedy spot, that's where the squid will be, because those are weed patches, so there will be squid around there. So just scroll. So this is the cliff. So this is cliff area, and that's the weed. That's a weed area around the sea. Look for that. So these dark green patches are all the weed patches. That's where the squid will be. So this is a good way to look for a new squid ground. So whenever also you go to a pier, just open up your Google Map and look at the pier where you are standing at the moment, and look for which side of the pier have the green patches. When you have the green patches, that's where the squid is. So try to cast towards that area or outside that area, so the squid will come up from the weeds to follow your jig. So this is one of the ways to find a spot to fish for squid. So because ideally a lot of people, they keep their spot as a spot X. Their secret to keep their spot partly is because they don't want it to be overfished, or they want a place to have a peace of mind when they go that's not crowded with people. So I understand that some people do not want to share their spot. It's partly because they prefer to have a place that is serene, and just that when they go, they have a place to fish, rather than a lot of spots that once people know. It's not because of the squid. It's because that it get too crowded, then you get annoyed and you do not want to fish there anymore. So it's not easy to find new squid spot. So ideally go to different squid fishing groups. Some might be nice enough to share the information. So just to scout around on pages and stuff, as well as to use the method I taught you. To use the Google Maps, open the 3D maps, and to look through the area you want to fish, or you know that there's a pier there, and look for the weed patches around. Any more questions? Look at the detail of that. This is a promotional item, so it's not for sale. So it will be only when you spend 150, you get this as a gift. So I have another one too. Okay. No jigs too. For Australia, we only allow, depending on the different state, some allow 2 jigs, some allow only 1. So ideally, we usually do not have more than 1 jig. So for us, I usually only use 1 jig. But for method, we do the egging method, like this method. And also we do, at certain area, we do the paternoster rig. So next time I'll teach the paternoster rig, so that, as well as the float rig, that people can use as well. So for UK, I think as the paternoster rig will be quite successful. It's partly because that the squid, your squid in the UK is more similar to our arrow squid, which is a deep sea squid. They tend to be more aggressive. So with the presentation wise, you can just lift it up and down. So you can use different type of jigs in UK compared to what we have here. Because like for here, we do not use the method, the jig that is just without the float, but just the hook with the jig itself, the body itself. But we use the sinker at the bottom to bring it down. Though that method we use paternoster rig, but in Australia, it's not often used. But we do use this normal jig, but we use the paternoster rig for certain areas. But those areas usually tend to be with squid that is more timid and smaller, so that you just have to be subtle, just lift it up and let it sink, lift it up and let it sink. You don't really do it the jerk or anything, so it just pretty much just cast out in front, just lift it up, let it sink, lift it up, let it sink. So that method we'll teach in one of master class. So we'll show you the few method, the float method and the other method, but usually we just use the egging method. But those other methods will help in different country as well as different state as well as different area. So depending on the type of squid in that area. So because in Melbourne we have an area called, in a pier called Mornington, that area is tend to known for small squid that congregates there. So there we usually tend to use a smaller jig or slow sinking jigs also, as well as at times we don't use egging because sometimes it's too aggressive. The squid is too small and it's too timid, they do not attack it. So we tend to use the paternoster rig that is more subtle. Yeah. Any more questions? Subesh, if you have time, go look through our previous masterclass as well. So we have 3 in the past. One is about the sink rate. The sink rate is important to understand how the jigs sink. So because you have to get the jig to the strike zone where the squid is, where it's usually at the bottom of the weed. So you need your jig to sink to the right area for the squid to actually sink your jig to strike it. And also we have how to select different colors, like our own Tsuriou's color science concept. So you can understand that. So you can choose different color jig to create the most visible to the squid, and also depending on the weather as well. So these are some of the topics that we have covered, so you can go check it out as well. Anything else? We'll give it a minute or two. If nothing else, we'll call it a day. You're welcome, Larry. Any topic that you would like to see covered? Let us know. So we'll do it much earlier compared to other topics. So just remember to have a main line using braid and the leader line use fluorocarbon. That's important. All right, I think that's about it. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in next masterclass. Have a wonderful day.